everyone, welcome to this revision video for your Migration Through Time exam paper. We're going to have a look at some of the different question types today. We're mostly looking at exam technique rather than content, though a little bit will sort of sneak in there. Just want to make a quick note first because there are a lot of different question types on this particular exam. So on this exam you would get two describe one key feature of questions, a source utility question, a follow-up question, one question that asks about either similarities or differences between two groups in two different time periods, one question that asks you to explain why something happened, and one that is the statement, how far do you agree, sort of question. Now the one key feature of the explain why and the statement, how far do you agree question, those all come up on other papers as well. So for today we're going to focus on the follow-up question, the question on source utility, and the question on similarities and differences. So let's jump straight into our follow-up question. So the follow-up question is one that tends to trip people up, but it is worth 4 marks and is a very, very easy win if you follow the correct structure. So you need to think like a historian and complete a 4-step process. Talking about the detail, the question, the source, and explaining how that links to your original query. So I tend to think about this as if you were physically going to do this bit of research. So if you read the question, it says, how could you follow up source B to find out more about the Caribbean Carnival in 1959? So first, you need to have a look at the source and think about what detail you're picking up on. So if it's a text source, you need to make sure you put a quote in. If it is a picture source, you need to specifically explain which part of the picture you are thinking about. Next, you're going to ask a specific question. And what do you want to know based on that detail? Now, what you want to know can't be something that's already in the image or the text. So often it's easier to think about, is something typical of the time period, which would sort of give you a nice, easy structure of question to ask. Then you're going to think about, where would I find this information? What source would I use to look for this? So imagine you've gone to a library, you've gone to an archive to find out more information about this. What book would you ask for? Now, if you just went up to a library and said, I would like some newspaper records, please, that's going to be of absolutely no help to anyone. You need to tell them what newspaper, what year, if it's a local one, which area, things like that. Same with stuff like police records. It's no good if you turned up at an archive asking for police records. You would need to have specific ones. Same principle here. So, for example, you might want to ask for the archive of the West Indian Gazette in any particular year. Then you're going to think about, what particular piece of information would you look for in that particular book, archive, record, whatever it is, for where you would find that, and how does that link to your original query? What information is it going to give you that's going to answer that question for you? So if you look here, we've got source B from an article written by Donald Hines in 2008. A little bit of extra provenance there. We'll come back to that in a second. So in 1958, Notting Hill exploded with racial hatred. The national newspaper said that what had taken place was an inevitable clash between white hooligans and black criminals. We realised that racism affected all of our society. In November 1958, Claudia Jones asked for suggestions about what we could do to get rid of the taste of the Notting Hill riots from our mouths. It was then that someone, most likely a Trinidadian, suggested we should have a Caribbean carnival, but in winter. Everybody laughed, and then Claudia called for quiet. Why not? She asked. Could it be held in a hall somewhere? Yes, it could, and it was held in St Pancras Town Hall in January 1959. So I want you to take 5 minutes now to have a go at answering this question. That's how long you would probably give yourself in the exam. Think about those things, and then when we come back, I'll give you my suggestions of what you might have included. Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you found that pretty alright to write. Suggestions of something you might have included in this. I would have chosen to look at it was held in St Pancras Town Hall and ask the question, was it typical for the carnival to be held in a hall after this? I would then look for editions of the West Indian Gazette from say 1960 to 1965, specifically articles about the carnival. And this would help answer the question, as it would tell me where the carnival was held in subsequent years. This is a very short question that tends to catch people out because it's just slightly strangely phrased. But if you can work out a structure for it, try and follow what I've given you here, this should make life a little bit easier for you. So let's have a look at our source utility question. So this is phrased like this: how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the Caribbean Carnival in 1959? So to give a little bit of background to this, this follows on from the Notting Hill riots and is designed to kind of bring the community together and foster sort of better relationships and just bring everyone up a little bit. Now, when you're looking at source utility, you are going to want to be looking at both the content and the provenance of the source and bringing in a little bit of your own contextual knowledge as well. So content is obviously what is in the source. The provenance, that's that little bit of information that you get at the top that tells you when and where the source was produced. And contextual knowledge, obviously, this is where your knowledge of the topic is going to come in. So we've got two sources here. We'll come back to why Gordon Ramsay's here in a minute. So we have a photograph showing some of the participants in the Caribbean Carnival January 1959, and we've got the same source that we've just used. Now, when you do this, we want to remember seers, hence Gordon Ramsay being there, and this is how you are going to analyse your source for its usefulness, its utility. So we're looking at source, evidence, accurate, reliable, summarise. Okay, so we've got a summary of the sort of first 4 points on the little blackboard there. So you want to tell us, what does the source say? Where do you find that in the source? So again, if it's a text source, you want to use a quote. If it's a picture source, you want to say a very specific part of the picture. You want to ask, does that match your own knowledge? Can you find something in your memory that matches that? And is it from a trustworthy source? Which is where you look at that provenance and decide, do you trust what that person is saying? Okay. After you've done all that, you need just a really simple sentence on the end to say how useful you find the source overall. Is it really useful? Is it not very useful? And just sort of summarize your view on that. Okay. Now, I'm not going to read you the source again because we've just read it. What I am going to do is give you 5 minutes now, a little bit longer if you need it. Feel free to pause the video just to see if you can write me a paragraph for just this source. Okay, so when you actually answer this question, you do need to do two sources. You don't have to compare them directly. You're just looking to write a paragraph about one and a paragraph about the other one. Okay, so take 5 minutes now. Can you write a question following this Sears structure for this particular source? Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully we had a good go at that paragraph and we didn't find that too arduous. If we have a look at a little example paragraph here, we say the source is very useful for an inquiry into the Caribbean Carnival. We're immediately starting with the source being useful. Most sources are useful in some capacity or other. So tend to sort of look at it from that angle. So in the orange there, we've got, it states that the carnival was organised as a response to racially motivated violence. So we have what the source says, and was designed to get rid of the taste of the Notting Hill riots from our mouths. We've got our evidence, we've got the quote from the source. This is accurate, so we've got the accuracy bit here in blue, as the majority of arrests during the Notting Hill riots were from the white community who were deliberately targeting the West Indian community. We then have reliable, so this information is also from a reliable source, as Hines was there when the decision to hold the carnival was made, and therefore knows the motivation behind it. So we've talked about the provenance. Quick minor point here, if you are talking about anyone sort of historically, with the exception of maybe a few monarchs, you generally want to refer to them by their surname if you want to use just one name. Just a little point while you're writing. And then we have our summarise at the end in red. This makes the source very useful for this inquiry. So just a really short sentence there to say, this is what I think of this source generally. Now I'm going to flip back to this slide here, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the Caribbean Carnival. So you've got source A and source B there. So you should already have a paragraph for source B, but take another 5 minutes now to have a look at source A and see if you can write me a paragraph for that one as well. So give yourself another 5 minutes, approximately how long you would have in an exam, and I'll meet you back here in a second. Fantastic. Hopefully you found that all right and you've now got a lovely source utility answer there. So now we're going to have a look at our similarities and differences question. So this one says, explain one way in which opportunities for Jewish migrants in the medieval period, circa 800 to circa 1500, were similar to opportunities for Jewish migrants in the 18th and 19th centuries, circa 1700 to circa 1900. So this is only a 4-mark question. It's quite a short one. And it's a really, really long, wordy question. It sounds more complicated than it is. Just a quick note while we're on it. When you see a little C before the dates like we have there, that means circa, which means sort of around that particular date. So it's not going to be totally precise. You've got a little bit of leeway either way. So there are a few things in this question that change. You need to make sure that you pay particular attention to them. So first you want to look at which migrant groups and which time periods are you being asked about. Obviously, if we think about Jewish migration, that comes up in every time period. So you do need to know specifically which time period you're looking at. And secondly, you will either be asked if these were similar or different to each other. So you need to make sure that you are thinking about specifically whether they are similar or different. Because even if you write a really good answer, if it's for the wrong sort, so if you say why something was different rather than similar, because there are similarities and differences between everything, you're not going to be able to pick up marks for that because you haven't met the brief of the question. Equally, if you talk about something out of time period or the wrong migrant group, you're going to have a similar problem. So make sure you read the question carefully, highlight it like I've done here. That will be a really useful thing for you to do. So take this opportunity now, have 5 minutes to try and answer this question. Again, that's roughly how long you'd have in the exam, but you can pause the video if you do need a little bit more time whilst you are practicing. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully that seemed pretty all right to have a go at writing that. So let's just have a little look at a potential answer here. So one main similarity in opportunities was how Jewish migrants became involved in specialised financial or skilled economic roles that were often distinct from what the native British population did. For the medieval period, this was driven by religious restriction. The Christian church basically banned Christians from being moneylenders, and because Jewish migrants weren't bound by this, it created a massive financial opportunity for them to become key moneylenders and bankers to both the public and the crown. This is similar to the 18th and 19th centuries because they still had jobs in the financial sector. For instance, they dominated areas like merchant banking and stockbroking. In both time periods, their opportunities weren't found in typical British labour or farming jobs, but in specialist, often financial sectors, making them economically important, but also visible targets for resentment. So this is possibly a little bit more than you would need to do. What I would say are the key things to take from this is they talk about each time period, so say what they did in the medieval period, what they did in the 18th and 19th centuries, and then also summarise that at the end of what is the similarity between the two of them. What is the thing you are picking out? So they've done that at the start and they've done that at the end, and that should pick you up a nice, easy 4 marks there. Like I said, there are different question styles on this paper. However, they're covered in other papers as well, so I don't think this is the place to kind of revise those because those structures are more or less the same. Well, thank you very much for joining me for your migration through time revision. Hopefully you found this useful, and do feel free to go back and do this again. If you need any different questions, have a look on the Edexcel website and see if you can find some different past exam papers. Hope your revision's going well, and I will see you all soon.